So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're doing a debrief of our experiences at SDHC 2024. And
Great time.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
A blast.
And I will probably refer to it by many different names, some of which are incorrect, but here you go, that's what we're doing. So if you do not know what SDHC is, it is a small war game or historical game, SDHC, historical game convention that's held in San Diego each year. Attendees, I think, anywhere from like 150 to 200. It's right between, I think, like 175-ish. And it's held kind of Thursday night, they have a mixer, and then it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, typically. This year, however, they did extend it to Monday because it happens to fall on Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So that we went last year for the very first time. So there's lots of videos from last year that you can see if you want, of different interviews and different games we experienced and saw. And we had such a good time, we wanted to go again. Part of what we did this year, though, is that we brought Kelly and Paisley, our respective spouses. They came with us. We did kind of a panel Q&A, and we'll talk about that. And kind of they met some of the people there, which was really fun. And then they got to go have vacation whilst we worked.
Away from us.
But that was something that we were able to do, and kind of we had such a good time last year that was like kind of what spurred that of like, hey, they would love it. It would be a great excuse to get out to the West Coast, have a good time.
Let's be honest, San Diego is kind of a Garden of Eden.
Yes.
I mean, it is utterly beautiful. The weather is perfect. Lots of picturesque scenery from the ocean to the foothills. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah,
right? So it's a great place to go visit.
70 degrees with zero humidity.
More like 80.
Well, in the sun, yeah. And then we came home and it was
like 55.
The clouds are like this high off the ground, and it was just raining cats and dogs, and it was cold and wet. And
it was depressing.
I haven't seen the sun at all today, and I'm like, oh.
To land in Indianapolis on Wednesday, like around 5:30.
The grimmest possible weather.
I was like, wow. And, normally I'm not overly concerned about the weather here, but after having been there for 5.5, 6 days, is like, wow.
It was the juxtaposition of the two where you're like, Anyway, we wanted to go back. We were able to. It was really great, and we were able to kind of share that experience with our spouses. That was really awesome. Had a good time. So I wanted to kind of sit down and just kind of talk through everything that we kind of did with regards to the actual convention.
Yeah.
One thing that you will note is we do not have a big pile of games that we purchased, because it's not that kind of convention.
They do have like raffles or silent auctions.
And quite a lot of those.
Yeah,
like there is a ton of like silent auctions, prizes, raffles, all sorts of things going on, but it is not like a vending type of place. It's not a vendor hall. Indeed, there is just one hall where everyone gets together and plays games. Even at like Buckeye Game Fest in the War Room, like Blue Panther shows up and has a little stall. There was none of that this year at SDHC. So just know that that's not the kind of vibe that it is. And so that's why you won't see us having dropped a lot of money on a big stack of war games, which is often the case in some of these things.
I mean, it's really about gaming. That's what it's about,
yes.
Right? Big open gaming area, lots of tables, lots of different kinds of games going on. Hex Encounter, card-driven games, light historical games. Just there's a very, very good mix.
And then on the time spectrum, crazy old classics, super brand new prototypes that are on like pen and paper, like all sorts of things in between that as well. Tons of different designers, publishers, developers, all sorts of people from the industry were there as well, which is really exciting. It's just fun. You like walk in and it's kind of who's who of like, oh my gosh, you designed this and you designed this and you published this and you're from this YouTube channel. It's pretty cool.
Well, and if you reach your arm out, you're going to hit someone that's a content creator, YouTube person, blogger,
And don't let that scare you off, though, because there is still plenty of people who just show up just for the gaming as well.
And we had no problem finding lots of games to play.
Yeah. So I really like the vibe of the place. It's held in the like
Portuguese
hall. It's
SES Portuguese Hall, I think is officially what the name is.
And I remember last year, kind of the big main hall, and then they had the little side room where they were holding the seminars. This year, I think the convention grew because that little side hall that they had for the seminars, that was full of big tables set up with big games. And they had to move the seminars to kind of the bar area, which had been closed off last year. I didn't even know existed. And they were like really like cramming tables into like every nook and cranny. So I'm curious over the next couple of years to see if they really outgrow that space. Because the location and the space itself was really nice. But that's an interesting journey and a trajectory that I think the convention's going on.
Well, and one other comment I would say about San Diego Historical Convention, whatever they call it, SDHC, is that I think their mission and their focus is to encourage, the play of alternative historical games. Not everything's just your classic Hex Encounter war game.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of very interesting, unique kind of historical designs that are straddling that line of, reality and then a little bit of, like John Company's played. I saw multiple times.
A lot of John Company going on. Hegemony was being played. Yep.
I saw Molly House being played at least once or twice.
Fort Circle had their demo of Shakespeare's First Folio. Yep. Like, you get a lot of those kind of peripheral things. Or even Sam London with his Microverse game, right? It's a conflict game, but
not
it's
really
a sci-fi
a war
game, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have lots of adjacent things to wargaming, but then there's still a ton of the regular wargaming going on as well. So you really can get what you want.
But I know they really focus on it being a safe space for anyone to play any of those kind of games.
Yes.
And I think that you can feel that, right? It's very open, very welcoming. I think everyone's very friendly, and it's really just a great environment. Very much enjoyed.
Yeah, no, without question, that's the case. So, just from the off, our experience this year was infinitely better because our flights left on time.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Like, we left, because I think last year...
we tried to fly out on Thursday evening like at 6.
Yes.
And our flight got canceled after sitting there for almost an hour and a half.
And that was the last flight out of Indy, and so it was like, cool. So we had to come back Friday, the crack of dawn.
Yep.
And then we flew out that morning, but...
Arrived at like 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, because I think the flight landed at like 1, but then it's like, gotta get to the hotel, drop off the stuff, and then get to the con. And before we do anything, it was kind of like early or mid-afternoon, and like, that's half of the day gone of Friday.
Yeah, so we really lost most of that first day last year.
Yeah, and so our experience last year was really awesome, and we crammed a ton of stuff in, but it felt quite curtailed. Whereas this year, especially with them adding the extra day on, a lot of people stayed on, so it didn't just kind of fall off a cliff on Sunday afternoon, which again, it kind of felt like it did last year. Like, everyone goes home, right? But with the extra day, more people stayed through Sunday.
Yeah.
A lot of people did go home, but that was...
I think we probably would have stayed and gamed on Monday had our spouses not been there with
and
us.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they were extending it a day, otherwise I probably would have planned a bit better.
We talked about it.
Yeah, not when I was...
It's okay.
I goofed on that.
Yeah,
I know we talked about extending it a day, but I didn't know that's why.
Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, I'll be better about that.
We had a blast. I will say this, I'm exhausted. Right? Going out there to the West Coast time, kind of getting adjusted to that after 6 days, coming all the way back. I had to work yesterday and today.
Yup.
And I'm beat. Like, I'm literally beat.
And it's interesting, because every other convention we go to is on Eastern time, which we are as well. And so we never have to, we might drive 6 hours or something.
Which is tiring in and of its own right.
But you don't have the jet lag.
No.
And a 3-hour time difference is is a big difference. Even like, I'll do a 1-hour time difference traveling into Central Time. Really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
3 hours,
that's
a big deal.
Well, it's funny, the first day or two, I think I was up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
On the dot, 4:30 every day.
And there was no reason for us to be up that early. It didn't mainly start until 8 or 9, but I just couldn't sleep.
Yeah, your body's like, hey, it's 7:30, get up.
Get up.
Like, no, it's 4:30, please stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got there on Thursday, got ourselves settled, and then we did that because on Thursday night, they have like a mixer, which we unfortunately missed last year. And so we went to that. And it was just neat. It's held at like a little brewery that's literally...
Epic Brewery, which is right on the marina.
Yeah, on the marina. And, I mean, there was a lot of people there. That was a good 50 people.
There was at least 40 or 50 people, yeah.
And and it was just, we hadn't experienced that before, so that was really nice just to kind of like see everyone in a non-gaming space where they're just hanging out and talking. It's just groups of people over here and groups of people over here, and there's pizza provided, which that was really awesome of them to do. And so you get to like chat with people in a way where they're not just like half distracted by a game.
Right.
Because sometimes it's like, oh, hey man, just want to like say hi, you know.
Yeah, and you're playing a game.
And it's like, cool. But having that little set aside time was like, cool. I got to kind of like sit and listen to like Eric Lee Smith and Mark Herman talk and discuss like old stories from back in the SPI days or the Victory Games days. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That doesn't happen as much during the convention because
No.
we're playing games and kind of concentrating.
Yeah. Well, and I think I talked to Mike Berticelli, Mark Miklos was there, David Thompson was there, Liz Davidson I spoke with a little bit, Ard Wolf, just a ton. John, I can't remember John's last name, but he's the guy that lives in
Yeah, he lives in
Minnesota.
Yeah. And
Good
then
guy.
I was able to kind of sit and chat with Kai Jensen.
Yep.
Which we spoke to her a lot last year, but this
Yeah.
year I felt like we were so busy with gaming. I'm glad that we were able to kind of connect.
Well, it was just a different little atmosphere to chill for 2 hours.
But I didn't know if I don't know. I don't go to many things that are like that.
Yeah.
And so that was like, oh yeah, that's a really good thing to include in a convention where it gives people a chance to literally like a mixer, I guess. That's the whole point.
Didn't you do that kind of at London Games Expo? Didn't you have like an event like that? Or did you just go to dinner with people when you
No,
were there?
that was just a dinner.
dinner.
I think it was kind of semi-organic where like everyone just kind of went to dinner. But having a space where it was just like, well, let's just hang out and chat and eat some pizza.
Yeah.
Everyone's
That's
got their
nice.
kind of guards down. That was really fun. That was really enjoyable. I really liked that we got to do that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of Thursday night.
Well, I want to say one other thing about the trip out. So we flew up to Chicago.
Yes.
Right? A 50-minute flight from Indianapolis. We flew to Chicago, got out. I think we had McDonald's. We arrived at our gate, and everyone's kind of assembling around because I think we had to get on in like an hour or something. And here comes David Thompson and Dan Bullock.
Yeah.
So we chatted with them for about 15 minutes kind of in that lobby waiting area, and then we boarded the plane. And we were sat kind of far, like in row 25 to 30.
Yeah, near the back
think.
of the plane.
So we were sat back there. I was in one row. You were like right behind me. My wife was 2 rows back, and then I don't remember where
Yeah, your
Kelly
wife was behind me, and then Kelly was across the
across
aisle.
the way. So we were kind of all spread out, and there was an opening next to me. And I'm sitting there, and then there comes Dan. I was like, hey, Dan. And he's inching ever closer, seat by seat. As you can see, he's looking for his seat number, like we all do. And I'm sitting there going, there's no way. There's just no way. He's going to end up sitting right next to me. And sure enough, he was like, I'm 27D, and I was in 27C or whatever the hell it was. But I talked to him for 3 hours. He can talk.
Oh, yeah.
Dan is a talker. I was totally okay with it because we were talking about a lot of his upcoming stuff, some other things that he's working on, which was fascinating. We talked about his upcoming solitaire game called Penitent. You are literally building a penitentiary in like the 1800s.
Yeah, I heard that.
Under Puritan kind of guidelines, so it's a fascinating topic. And he had a book. What a total nerd, by the way. He had a book on design for 18th century puritanical prisons. And I'm like, wow. He was like,
who wrote that?
no idea. No idea.
Yeah.
But he was reading that because he wanted to make sure to get some of those elements in there. That was fascinating. We talked a little bit about his upcoming game called Fruit. We talked about, I think he's looking to do a second edition of 1979. And then a couple of other things. But it was fascinating. Just very, very unexpected, very interesting, and really made that 4-hour flight go very, very quickly.
And it was good to know whose fault it was that I couldn't get seats together with everyone.
Yeah.
On some of the flights I could, on some of the connections I just
kinda
couldn't. And that's
funny.
like, oh, Dan, it's your fault.
Yeah, right.
I should have called him up and known.
But that was cool. I was very, very pleased with that.
Yeah, and it's funny because they kind of showed up and it was like, oh, surprising. Like, I shouldn't be surprised. There's only so many flights to San Diego, and we're all going to the same place.
They go through like Indy and Chicago, and
yeah, like the two big hubs. You should expect to see someone.
Yeah, but
yeah, that was a good time. And then I think Friday morning, we got up, had some breakfast
at the Point Break
Cafe, which is literally next door to the.
So let me ask you a question: is it weird that we go to the same place every morning? Is that my autism?
I don't think so.
Okay, because it was really good food.
Because if it's A, good, and B, extremely convenient.
Well, it was literally across the street from the center.
Like, we could have gone to other places that were also
close.
But that's like right there. But I also wanted to scout it out because we were holding the breakfast the next day there, and I wanted to make sure it was good, because if it was bad, I would have like
changed.
I would have tried to figure out something.
But it was a good place. I thought it was affordable for what, the value that you got for your money. I thought it was very good. It was somewhat of a beer hall push type environment.
It's definitely like a dive bar.
Yeah.
That also happens to serve food.
And also has more plastic skeletons than I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But very poorly lit. Like, I remember thinking, I can barely see.
The door has like holes in it and is like hanging off the hinges.
And it looked like someone had like chiseled out the door.
And there's the big sign outside, but the door doesn't have a sign on it. It's just a brown door.
It actually looked like we were going into the kitchen. That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, I was like, the door's got to be around the other side of the building because this is not an entrance. And you're like, nope, it is. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know Paisley and Kelly kind of mentioned, you guys went to the same place? I'm like, is that weird?
I also think that we're kind of used to that because, if you go to something like Buckeye Game Fest, we eat breakfast at the hotel, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nowhere else really.
It's almost, right, and then what's the same thing with WBC? You can't go anywhere, right?
You either don't eat or you go.
I also think there's an element of being a creature of habit to that.
Sure.
In a way that, like, it's convenient and it's breakfast food. Like,
well, I also think sometimes because I'm hyped up and really focused on doing our games, I just want something I'm familiar with and I can, order it, eat it, and move on.
Well,
right?
And I also now know, like, what the service is like, how long it's going to take. Because if it's really long, I've got to find somewhere else tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like this.
It was perfect.
I don't think it's that big a deal.
Okay.
But the reason that we did that is because we were 9 a.m. games, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had breakfast, and then first thing we did was Shiloh, the first day from Revolution Games.
Brand new from Revolution Games. That came out like in August or something.
2 months ago. So we played this with Grant from Pushing Cardboard.
Yep, Grant Linneberg.
So if you've ever read the Pushing Cardboard blog, Grant Linneberg's the author of that. He's the man behind it.
I think his main thing is a podcast, if I'm not
mistaken. It's a podcast as well.
But I know he has a YouTube channel. I don't think he has a blog. Maybe
he does, because that's what I read it on.
Okay.
That's what I know him from. But he had kind of reached out and offered to teach
Blind Swords.
you this, and I just kind of tagged along, and it was fun.
Well, it was a perfect opportunity because you're on an ACW kick. This is a brand new 2024 release.
Yeah.
It looks amazing, and spoiler alert, it was amazing.
And we've played a lot of Blind Swords adjacent games.
Black Swan. What was the other one called?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But this was our first, like, technically actual Blind Swords game. Mm-hmm. And
it was funny. I did read what Grant had written, and he was like, "Oh yeah, they took like ducks to water." And I'm like, "Yeah, we do play a lot of war games," and I'm not sure it's overly complex. It's just getting in your mind what are the nuances and the differences, right?
Well, especially with this, because we played
Black Swan,
Most Pitiful Sacrifice, At Any Costs, both Herman Luttman designs, and this system was originally from him. I know the core of what it is. It's like, okay, is there a command radius to our commanders in this? No.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
What's the movement?
I just leave that aside. Then it's like, how do we do move and combat? Yep. Really, that's like the core.
Those are the two things that I think
we know that,
the rest of it.
Yeah, the rest is, hey, Steve.
Yeah.
So Steve Carey, the designer of this particular volume, was on hand and was very excited that we were playing it.
Yep.
And he was also teaching another table his new Gettysburg game, part of this system as well.
Yep.
But he was running over and he'd sit down with us for 20 minutes, half an hour, then he would flip-flop between the
Yep.
tables, and he'd have the details of like, okay, here's this one like little situation, just make sure that you take care of that, or this,
yeah.
or here's some strategic considerations because you've pulled these guys off the line. What does that really mean? What does that allow someone else to do to you?
I also thought it was very interesting. Like he really grounded the history with what we were doing and how we were doing it. I
Yeah.
thought that because
Yeah.
he'd done all the research and read all the books.
Yeah.
and-
Oh, this is what actually happened.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
cool. Well,
That
let's,
was pretty
let's either
fascinating.
do that or try something different.
Yep. But I will say this: blind swords, because we've played it with At Any Cost and
Yeah.
other systems. It's just a great little system. It's chit pull activation. Sometimes you pull your CIC, which you can activate any formation.
You can try to activate
You
them.
have to roll. But then sometimes you pull like your brigade commanders, and they have like 3 or 4 different formations.
Or the
underneath
regimental
them.
commanders
That's
that you
what I
choose
meant.
your brigades.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I think those are the names, but I'm not sure.
Well, I was thinking brigade commander because, but it's regimental command over their different brigades.
Or it's divisions, and I'm wrong.
Yeah, we're idiots, or I'm an idiot. But, that very easy to understand, very easy to follow. Also, I have always loved chit pull because it's chaotic. You
Yep.
don't know what to expect. How many times were we like, well, particularly at the end, we're sitting there like, we've got to draw whoever it was.
The chip pull adds tension to the initiative mechanics.
Yep.
When in other games where it's like, I do all my stuff, you do all your
Yep.
stuff.
I go, you
There's
go.
no tension in
Nope.
that part of it. Yeah,
Nope.
or even I go, you go. Okay, it's very predictable.
Yeah.
Whereas that unpredictability, not only is it tense, which is a great feeling to play around with, but it allows for certain things to happen and the flow of a game to be, a flow of a turn to look totally different from the turn
Yeah.
before. And to me, that allows for really interesting things to be able to happen.
Well, and then on top of that, it also has some event chits that you pull, so things happen. You actually end up selecting a few chits. I think we put 3 in. We were able to select 2, and some of those
I
were.
think we selected 1 and 2 were random.
Okay,
in,
maybe that's
in
what
this
it was.
scenario,
In
but
this
the
scenario.
scenarios are all different.
But some of those were really, really impactful. Like we
Oh,
were
yeah.
thinking, oh, this would be really nice, and then the other 2 were kind of fun because we didn't really know what was
Yeah,
going to come out.
and we did it super randomly where we didn't
We didn't even
know.
look, we just
and,
grabbed
and we
and put
hid the
the-
other one, so we didn't know
Yep.
what we'd put in. You can look, but no, that's
well,
boring.
but that was part of the fun.
I think so too.
But drawing those chits out that throw in that extra level of confusion, or you can activate again, or you get a bonus, or you can hold some of those to redo a failed activation roll. All kinds of stuff.
Or like negates the next chit, and you're like,
Yep.
ooh.
Yeah, very powerful. But I think that's what's really good about that system is it just creates a very tense, on the edge of your seat, and very interesting, and frankly engaged. We played that thing for 5 hours,
Was it that long?
4.5 hours, I think.
It didn't feel like it,
No,
that's for sure.
and it was just like the entire time I was like, ooh, I can't wait till the next turn. I can't wait till the next draw. I can't wait till the next blah, blah, blah. And ultimately in the end, we were able to outflank the Union because we had kind of a really serious drive early on in the center that caused Grant to peel off some of his kind of better formations as they moved to kind of intercept us. And they did a really good job of that. But then he left kind of a beat up brigade on the left flank. And then all of a sudden we were able to get him activated twice in a row and move them onto a position that ultimately was an auto win.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really love about this system is that you get really fun tactical combat in it, and the tactical combat's really something interesting,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
a lot to consider and a lot of choices in everything you do. But it's also about maneuver.
Yep.
And we saw that so we played the Hornet's Nest scenario, which is just like, here's the fighting, right? It's like, here's your guys, fight. But you get the maneuver in in this particular game where I think in some other battle games, the maneuver might be less important. It's like, take some losses, and like the victory conditions are like, just push them off their defensive line, which is fine. But like this one was like, yeah, you pull some reinforcements in to support this part of the line.
Yeah.
You open up a flank, and we turned the flank and won. That was really interesting.
Well, I think there were clear paths to victory for us by controlling a couple of spots, but that was the only kind of auto win. And at that point, our units had been really kind of beat up.
Yeah.
And that was our only real chance of winning. But it was so cool because we drew chit after chit after chit. None of his could activate over on that flank. And then we ultimately, I think, drew them 2 times within a couple of chits.
Yeah, close enough where
3 or 4 chits.
We could make a beeline for, and it was
just
great
fantastic. And then to sit there and debrief with Grant and Steve Carey, and then we shot a video as well. This was an excellent game.
Oh yeah, this is tip top. Whilst we're playing this, you're on the Revolution Games website, like
looking at the others.
They have a sale on. We don't have this. We
Yeah.
don't have that. So it's definitely one of those things because we have a couple of these already.
Well,
right?
we have Chickasaw Bayou, which is a prelude to Vicksburg. I got that like in March or April.
Yeah, that's also 24, right?
Yep, I've clipped it. I would love to now play it. And then there was another one that came out this year, but we didn't get it. But then you own like
I think I've got Kernstown on the shelf.
a couple.
Yeah, which is the 4th one. I think this is the only other one that I have.
Okay.
But like, yeah, it's one of those systems.
Yeah.
Like, you know the system, that let's look at the nuances and
Yeah.
let's get going in it.
Well, and I think Steve kind of laid out the next couple that they were going to look at. I think the next one's going to be Gettysburg. Didn't
Yes,
he
yeah,
say?
no, they had
And they
that,
were already play
they had
testing
that
it.
play testing, and
So, and that was day 1, I believe, because it was
Yes, it is day
really the skirmishes on the outset as everybody was moving in to the area.
and that's the interesting part to put into a game is it has all that maneuver
Yeah.
and all of that kind of jeopardy.
Yep.
Which Gettysburg Day 2, okay, we're all lined up and
Yep.
it's a bit more static.
Well, you know, Buford's decision to dismount those cavalry and really put up a stiff resistance held the Confederates off long enough to really make it interesting and really turn the tide of that first day, and ultimately, I think, affected the entire battle. But somebody's sitting there going, no, that's not the way. But that's what I remember. So, anyway, great system, had a blast.
Huge thanks to Grant for sitting down, teaching, and giving us the space to play this. Huge thanks to Steve for A, designing this, and B, answering all of our questions and sitting down on camera. That was really awesome.
Yep.
For sure.
But I know that video's coming up.
Yes, it is. You have either seen it or it will come out very soon, and I don't know when this one's going up. But Shiloh, the first day, this is really, really, really good.
Yep, very much good.
Really, really.
That's probably going to end up being on my top 10 because it was just that good.
Yeah, it really was.
Very good.
So after that, we did like a Q&A seminar with Kelly and Paisley. So they showed up wearing their Players Aid shirts, and we hosted a small seminar where we kind of just wanted to do a Q&A because we had them in tow, so it's like open the floor up for questions for them.
Yep.
And so we had attendees in the seminar who asked some really, really good questions about, what it's like to have us be doing this and what the support of that looks like and the things that they've seen us kind of gain and grow from doing this.
It was kind of cool,
and kind of the history of the Players Aid and where it sits with them and any advice they have for budding war gamers and things like that, which was really fun. It was a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
That's not on video. You had to be there.
Yeah, we didn't do that one.
Well, there's probably rules about that, but I also wanted to make sure that, like, hey, that's one of those unique experiences that you had to be there for it.
Yeah.
But I had a good time. I think they had a good time as well, and it was a really productive and fun discussion that we had that I really liked. That was about an hour.
Yep.
And then after that, we then played Crisis 1914. So this is a 2 to 5 player game.
Best at 5 players, right?
Oh, yes, without question.
Not sure I would play a 2-player, and that kind of what you said, because you've played it 2-player.
I did it 2-player, and I would not waste my time.
Yeah.
This is from Worthington. It's designed by Maurice Suckling. Maurice Suckling played this with us.
Yep. And trashed us, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was and so did Mark Herman played.
And he was up there.
And John played as well. It was John. And
I brought up the rear.
Yes. I think I was second to last.
Yeah. I got really messed over with is it called tension?
Yes.
I just could not remove my tension. And that I made some mistakes early on to try to get a good lead, and I'll never do that again.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating game. It's this like card game, but it's a tableau builder. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is you're trying to like push your kind of prestige as high as possible, whilst keeping the tension that you're exerting on other European powers as low as possible.
Yeah.
And it's the July crisis of 1914. Everyone is exchanging barbs and trying to not be the one who mobilizes and effectively lights the match.
I think in essence you're trying to force others to take that next step.
Yes.
Through the play of some of your cards, you're trying to incite that, but remain in control and keep in reserve so that you don't cause it.
Yeah, you're trying to not be the one who caused it.
Yeah.
But you want to have the most prestige, which is effectively exertion of power.
And it's really like I felt like it was a razor's edge, right?
Oh, yes.
You have to decide to take risks using your tension and doing, I think it was called belligerent actions or belligerence actions. When you do those things and you have the right cards in your tableau, you can get didn't we figure it was 10 victory points?
I think 9 or 10 is the most you can ever get
in ever one round. And I think there are 6 rounds. Our scores were in the upper teens to the lower teens because we were all kind of feeling each other out.
No, that's very typical.
Oh, is it very typical?
Yes.
Okay.
I think mid to lower teens up to 20, 21.
Okay.
That is really the upper extremity of what you can ever get, because if you're getting big scores, you're also getting a lot of tension,
and it's
you
hard
just
to get rid of it.
There's only a certain number of turns in the game, and you need time to reduce the tension to score big again.
Yeah.
Because if you score a little bit every time, you'll lose.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that.
Well, it was very interesting too. This game is uber asymmetric.
Oh, yes.
All 5 of the factions, which represent the major countries of the time, have a different deck that is unique to them. There are similar cards, but there's always a little twist that's different.
There's similar types of cards.
Right.
But they'll also have
little abilities for you.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of red cards. Some of my red cards have different text to yours, but they function in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the distribution and makeup of everyone's decks, like you said, totally asymmetric. And some of them do, the Austria-Hungary deck doesn't have a lot of ways to reduce tension.
It doesn't. It had 3 cards total.
It's intended to force you to be more aggressive, because you also have things like the ultimatum, where you can score prestige or victory points
by just playing that card
without gaining tension. So that's the little balancing mechanic there.
But the great thing about that, because I was the Austro-Hungarians, when you do that, you now have to put that card into your deck.
Yeah, you get the mobilization.
And when you draw that card, you start World War I.
Yeah, you immediately lose the game.
Yep. So you end up trying to take the actions. I'm trying to remember the names of them.
You're trying to do reorganizes and the other one.
I just can't remember that.
No, you've said
but
that.
it's like you're looking through your deck or looking at the top few cards of your deck, rearranging them, sometimes pulling 3 cards off, playing 1 card.
But yeah, you're fishing for that.
Yeah, you're trying to make sure you know where it is,
or get it into your hand, so
and
you're
then
not forced to play it, because there's cards off the top of your deck mechanics in this game.
It's just a really, I think, well done chaos-inducing game, because it's so asymmetric and it's so different. And everybody's trying to do the same thing and do it the best.
Yeah, you're creeping up on that track, and it's a game of one-upmanship each turn. And I love that brinksmanship. I think it's so thematic.
Oh, it very, very much
because
so.
it's a politicking game in this one, and it's like you're just pushing each other further and further and further.
Yeah.
Each card that you play, because I played a belligerence and I've got all my red cards out. I desperately want to win this to max out my score.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You did the same.
Yep.
And so we're going to keep going.
Yep.
And keep going. And it's like, how much tension do I want to max out at,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at what you've got and what you can do, and maybe that's more than what I can do. So then I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
I'll just take the L, but I'm gonna back off real hard.
Yep.
So you've got a crazy high tension score.
your
The rest of
tension
us are
doesn't
low.
increase, yeah.
You can't do anything next turn, and the rest of us can just race up the
Yeah,
board. There's so much to it that's so interesting.
One of the best mechanics I thought was you could literally pull certain cards back into your hand from your tableau. So you had played mostly those red cards
Yes.
that were worth 3 or 4,
mostly 4s.
You could pull one of those back to your hand, thereby reducing your score and thereby reducing the tension that you're going to get. And at the right time, that can be very, very advantageous.
What you're trying to do is wait, right? So
Yeah.
you're in that race with someone, pushing it, and all of a sudden, if you've got 2 of those yellow cards,
You wanna back it off
pump the
and-
brakes, you go down 8 spots, this person's out on an island. And
Yep.
it's like, cool, they've got a big score, but they're toast.
Well, and I also thought one of the really cool mechanics about the scoring was, the guy in first got 3 points, the guy in second got 2 points, so there wasn't a huge difference, although you could manipulate that with your, I'm trying to remember what they were called, the red cards that would double your score.
You could double them with those cards. They were
And then if you were in first place on the turn order track, you got another one. But, second place got 2, and then pretty much everybody else got 1. So it's, if you're already going to get 1, you know what? Just back off. You got 6 rounds.
Yeah.
Back off, plan. I love that. I very, very much love that. This game is going to reward, though, multiple plays.
Yes.
Multiple plays of the same faction, but also enough plays of the others to really get a feel for how everyone interacts. And I was very blown away by this.
Yeah.
That it was as good as it was.
I've played this 3 times, and I played a different faction each time, but I feel like even with that, I'm much more competent at the game each time that I play it.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I'm expecting, or, like, at least the kinds of things to look for in a game. If someone's doing this, if someone's doing that, what does everyone's tableau look like? Who's putting out a bunch of momentum cards? I need to go and do my reorganize right now before that becomes locked.
Yeah, those momentum cards, I think if you get 3 out, you lock your opposing factions. You can't do the reorganization.
Yeah.
And you did that to me one time. I'm like, damn it. Because that screwed the hell out of me.
Yes, and
that's fine. That's the way the game is designed.
I've played that previously, and we were doing it to each other almost every turn.
Yeah.
Like, someone would proc it, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It's
so powerful.
Because that's the beauty of it, because that's what forces people into, like, end up
Yes.
drawing those mobilization
Yeah.
cards. And I've seen a game end that way, and it was really funny.
Yeah.
Like, it was great. It was a good laugh. But it's
a great game.
It's really good.
Yeah.
The rulebook is not great.
And I was grateful to have Maurice there because he was able to walk us through it.
Yeah, I found the rulebook to be kind of all over the place, and
Well, I read it after we got home, and I was like, I don't think I got out of that what we ended up playing. I mean, there were parts,
yeah.
but I'm very glad that we learned it from him. Now we can play it again.
Yeah, me and Jeff
teach
kind
it
of
effectively.
bumbled our way through it the first time, and
Yeah.
we had a lot of questions.
Sure.
And there are play aids on Board Game Geek which are really good.
I need to download those.
The play aids in this are a bit lackluster.
I
The play aids
wa-
don't really exist.
Right. So this is one of those games. This is not a war game. It's a political game. Think of a game like Versailles, right? From
Yeah.
GMT. Think of a game like somewhat like Churchill, but not really. But it's like those kinds of games where you're jockeying for position, playing your cards to benefit yourself or hinder your opponents. It's just very well.
But it
very
plays
well done.
much shorter than something like Churchill.
90
as well.
minutes, I think, is
and,
what it.
And sitting 5 players, that's
Yeah.
good for a convention. And what was nice is we were playing this. There were 2 tables next to us playing
Yes.
as well. Like, this was a popular
Yep.
fair at the
And I saw it off and on pretty much all week.
Yeah, it's very good. Get
Yeah.
the play aids off BGG though. They will be a boon.
One other comment I want to make about this game: did not need that board at all. You could have put all the information that you used on that on like your player boards.
Or the board could have been half the size.
Well, yeah, it just didn't need it. It reminded me of some of the other games that we've kind of laughed. Ha ha ha! You've got 2 spots and you don't really need it. But anyway, it's not a big deal.
But the game itself, very good. I really enjoyed what we're doing.
I always wonder, when we end up with a game like this that has a big board, did that have a bigger role early on in the process, and they just never shrank it? Because it literally could have been a card.
Yeah.
Literally. Because all you're doing is tracking your attention, your score, and then...
There's a lot of negative space on the board.
Yeah, it's... Anyway, but it looks good. Cards are great looking. The board looks great. Very good package. I enjoyed it.
Ton of
very
stuff
much.
in here as well. Yeah, I really liked this. I'm glad I've been able to play it multiple times this year. And I've had a blast every time that I have. That's for sure.
I'm going to keep my copy. Because that would be something you'd take to a convention and probably play almost every year. Because it hits that sweet spot of 90 minutes to 2 hours with it each.
Yeah.
So
that we did that in the afternoon, and then we had dinner.
We had dinner with the ladies.
And then what did we do in the evening?
We came back and played Common Sense with Sam London.
So Common Sense, again, there is either a video already out or there will be one very soon with Sam London. So last year we played a couple of his other games. We played Firefight Tactical. We played Miniverse. Microverse. One of these days I'll get it right. And then we kind of looked at... He had Common Sense with him last year. We saw the map of it.
And it was called Absolve from All Allegiance.
Yeah, it had a different name.
Time. And the board still says Absolve from All Allegiance, but he's changing it to Common Sense.
And he changed it like that day, or the day before. Like someone had...
And it's specifically a reference to Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense.
Yeah.
So...
But it is a... it's a two-player card-driven game about the American Revolutionary War.
But it's a trick taker.
Yes.
Which is very interesting, and it's not a trick taker like other trick-taking war games that I played in the past year.
Yeah.
Very different style of trick taking.
It's, I've got my deck of British cards, you've got your deck of colonial cards, and then in a trick-taking style, there's suits and there's numbers and
trump cards.
I'm going to play this, you're going to have to follow suit or play a trump card. And then whoever wins that does the thing on the card.
Yeah.
Or you can blank it and take
just do one action.
action.
Which you end up doing, actually, I felt like, quite often.
Yeah,
it's not efficient, but that's what
sometimes that's what's needed.
It's what you need to do.
And yeah, I was surprised at how often we were doing that.
Yeah.
But it's really good.
Very good.
Like, trust me, it's really good. The flow of the game, where I might go on a run of winning a bunch of tricks, and then the colonials are like, cool, we're going to trump when it's really important, maybe win one more, and then we're going to cede the initiative so that I can re-trump, because the colonials, they get points for doing that.
Yep. And they get points that bring in the French into the conflict,
yes,
which is pretty interesting.
There's a lot of abstract tracks of things that are moving on, but you do have a geographical board that you're literally moving your armies around, trying to fight each other, take control of areas.
It's basically an area control game with that trick taker to decide your actions.
Yeah.
And then the cards have a lot of different events that some give you really powerful abilities. Most of the Patriot zeros and ones extremely powerful.
Well, I think it's same for the British,
same with
right?
British.
The low numbers, which are much harder to win tricks with and thus proc the events, really
give you amazing benefits.
The
higher numbers,
the 8s and 9s, which are really easy to win with.
Yeah.
Marginal events.
Yeah.
Right. A couple of actions, it's fine.
The one thing that I know we went back and forth about was the process of movement. And it's probably very thematic from the historical period.
Oh,
a lot of our
it definitely is.
AMREV games that we've played have that, even the one we played with Mark Miklos on the final day. But very tenuous to move, get into position, and to be able to utilize the combat cards effectively. Because more often than not, combat cards, the red ones, had you could do 2 battles, but you have to already be in contact in 2 different spaces with people.
So you have to have moved into those spaces with a trick that you won, and then have a combat card that you have to win with to initiate those combats.
I don't know if it's as hard as it felt, but I'm telling you, it was very difficult to get that to go off.
It was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
To do multiple combats, it's almost
impossible.
It's very, and maybe that's just what we experienced in the game, but it was a struggle. And then with the British on top of that, you have to supply all of that.
Oh yeah.
You have to pay supply to move the guys. Then you have to pay supplies to shoot with the guys.
Yep.
So I have to have won all these tricks in a row.
And then build up your supply to do your campaigns.
And then I've blown all my supply, and I'm like, oh crap!
Yeah,
Now I've just got to build more supply, I guess. And it's very challenging, but it's very rewarding as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's very asymmetric, right? The cards were very different. The Patriots are kind of slow. It's a slow burn. They're trying to build up congressional points that can be used to win tricks, like adding up. That was very powerful, and I don't think I understood how powerful that was until like we were in 17.
Yeah, every time you drain that to 0, I'm like, cool.
Yeah, right.
I knew it.
But having 5 or 6 of those really kind of tempered. It was just interesting. And I very much enjoyed the trick taking. It was very challenging, but I thought it was very well done.
I would be very curious. It's probably a balance thing. I'd be very curious to see if they gave you an option where you could, say, spend that congressional power to subtract numbers from yours to help you trump easier. Or
sure, yeah, that would be interesting.
and
yeah,
and I don't know,
because when you do trumps, you're trying to trump lower. Could you tie and win a trump?
No, I think it had to be lower. But
that was interesting.
And I don't know how game design works, but
even
if you did it at like a 2-to-1, like it was more expensive.
You spend
to do
2 points to reduce 1. That's interesting.
That could be something fun to play with.
Interesting.
Because there were times where you just like weren't using them.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, cool. I'll just keep going. But yeah.
Well, and I don't think I really felt the importance of how important they were until the game starts in 75, and I think by 1779 we had kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you have to do is you have to decide to mulligan. Every turn you're going to draw 10 cards, and you can mulligan up to 5 of those, and that is so very important.
And it's not like, oh, I'm taking a mulligan. Like, no, you need to rework your hand to be as good as it can be.
Yeah. With the understanding, now that you're kind of putting those cards you got rid of kind of back in your deck, you're not really getting rid of them. They're just being pushed down the road.
Yeah.
And it was interesting.
But then it's like, I'm pushing them down the road. You have 36 cards, you'll use 30 of them in a campaign.
That's true.
So
That's very true.
A bunch of those you won't, you can get away with. But
Yeah.
then also, if I've got a hand of all really low cards, that means we're in like, Trump alley, because we're just playing the low cards when I don't have the stuff to go. So
very interesting.
You can say yourself, there's so much to consider, and it was all things considered, a very polished game. I'm looking forward to when that comes out. But there's a big interview with Sam that we did afterwards.
And it's called the Will to Fight series, I think is what he's trying to call it. So it was a counterbalanced track. Patriots start on one end, British on the other, and wherever you meet on that track, the game then ends or can end, and you have to
and that
score points off of that.
The score on the track contributes victory points to your also geographical ones in that game. Yeah, and he's got more in the works. That's exciting.
Very cool.
The system was great. I hope it goes and takes off, and I think people will really like it.
There's nothing not to like. It's a solidly put together, very simple. And we play 2 hours, 2.5 hours maybe.
I think it's 2 hours for your first game, 90 minutes for your second, is what they'd said.
But I'm very much looking forward to that one on the P500 from GMT. So good job, Sam.
Is it going through them?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's already been picked up, but they haven't announced it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sam was telling everybody.
But I think that was the last thing that we did on Friday.
And it was like 11 o'clock, I think, when we were walking out.
Yeah, like crawled back into bed.
Yeah.
And then we were up and at 'em fresh and early on Saturday morning because we hosted a breakfast at the Point Break Cafe, which we had previously discovered was good.
It's very good. And yes, I got the same thing every morning. The only thing I really changed was my the berries that I put on my toast. I had strawberry,
the slightly different flavored jam.
I did try the marmalade one day, but it was just solid. Just a good American breakfast.
Yeah.
Very good hash browns, by the way.
Yes.
Crispy. That's the way they should be.
And very thin.
Very thin,
which is why they was. But yeah, that was really enjoyable. We sat down with a bunch of people who had kind of signed up for that.
It was Chester, and I can't remember Chester's last name.
I'm not going to dox him with his last name.
Tom Blessing, who I played with at WBC.
Yes, I had not met him.
Then myself, Russ Wetley, who we know from Cardboard Conflicts. I can't remember the other guy's name, and that's why I shouldn't have started this.
James Buckley was with us.
Yep, to your left, and then the guy in between. Very nice guy. I'm drawing a blank.
It was one of our patrons, I believe.
Okay, but that doesn't.
That's
even
was
worse.
it John?
I don't think so.
Now I feel bad.
Maybe.
It was a very long time ago, and I'm very tired. That's
Yeah.
my excuse. But yeah, it was a really
great.
good time just to kind of sit, again, carving out time to give us an excuse to just like talk to people.
Yep.
Because, no pressure with like, hey, I'm in the middle of a game, or you're in the middle of a game. Just to sit down and chat and kind of see what everyone else had going on at the convention, because a lot of people were doing a lot of different things.
Yep.
And that was really exciting. And just a fun, nice way to kind of ramp up the day.
I very much glad that we did that.
Yeah.
Thought it was good.
Because after that,
The main event.
we launched into the main event of Saturday, which was Virgin Queen.
I'm going to bring these over too.
Virgin Queen
From GMT Games.
was, sorry, I was just thinking in my brain about something. I shouldn't do that. Virgin Queen from GMT Games, designed by Ed Beach, and so the designer of Here I Stand. This is the sequel for that. Ed Beach has autographed my rules with his actual name, and I love his signature. It's literally, he just writes his name regularly.
Yeah, right.
We met him at WBC, 2 years ago. So Virgin Queen we had previously played, so this was kind of a second play for us.
Yep.
And Andrew hosted the game.
Andrew Heim.
Yes.
H-E-I-M. Great guy, by the way.
Yeah, super nice guy.
Very prepared.
He's played this, I think, 3 or 4 times.
I think he said 5 or 6 times.
Was it that? Okay. And he had this all mostly set up, but he also had like all the play aids that have all the tracks in them. He had magnetized the counters and had them on like
Vertically.
Standing.
Yep.
So it helped,
that everybody could see.
Yeah, it helped everyone to see, but also helps reduce the table space.
Yep.
This
Although
is a big game.
we did knock that down like twice.
Yeah.
Me once and someone else the other time.
But the effort that he had put into putting all these together, there was lots of printed additional play aids and things.
Well, he did like almost a strategy guide for each of the factions, which I was blown away.
Yeah, so for the French player, you would open it up. It had your victory conditions and some bits and pieces on the back. But you could, if you wished to, open it up, and it had kind of like, here's what to do in the beginning, and then here's some more additional advice if you were feeling like you needed it.
Did you not follow the advice on the Protestants?
I did. What he forgot to put on there was to roll better.
To roll well.
So that was his fault.
It was.
That I did so badly.
Yeah, that should have been in big bold letters.
But this
roll better.
Andrew really went the extra mile.
Oh, it was amazing.
I think Grant had played Here I Stand. Grant Lindenberg played
Virgin Queen.
But never Virgin Queen. And then David
Siskin
had not played.
And Maury Suckling had not played either.
Really?
I'm unsure if he had played Here I Stand.
Okay, I think he may have done. But it was a good mixture of like new players and semi-experienced players at least with us, and it was a really, really, really good time. We played. Gosh, did we play till 2 or 3?
We started at 9, took a 30-minute lunch break, and I think we finished at about 3:30.
Yeah. Okay.
Give or take. So what's that?
It was mid-afternoon.
5.5 hours.
Yeah.
6 hours.
And it was.
And we got through 3 turns, right?
Yes.
Which was the earliest I think I've seen it ever end.
Yeah, and you were like, oh God. It was a Spanish automatic religious victory because I had rolled so very poorly.
And I had consequently rolled so very well.
Yeah.
That actual rebellion in England, I think I picked up 6 spots
very, very
rolls.
quickly.
I rolled, because you only have to roll 3s, 4s, or 5.
It's 4, 5, or 6.
And I think I rolled like 5 or 6 hits.
Yeah,
which was crazy.
And I was getting no help from my allies. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a really, really good time. I'm glad that we got back to Virgin Queen, because remember the first time we played it, it went, I think, 5 turns.
And it was like 3
And it
years
was an
ago.
all-day, and it was a couple of years ago, but it was so good.
Yeah.
But then we flip-flop between that and Here I Stand. We played Tanto Monte recently.
Well,
Good to get back to this.
I would posit that Here I Stand is, in my opinion, the better game. The more fun and interesting game. Virgin Queen is a very, very different experience, and I very much like it. You're now questioning?
So
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
it's about phraseology.
Here I stand as superior.
I like Here I Stand more.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes Here I Stand a better game.
Okay.
It might be. That still might be correct.
I feel like the tension has been sucked out of this one with the, particularly in the religious war, because we are not doing counter.
It's not a head-to-head each time. And I get that, but the streamlining of the religious war
makes it much better.
Makes it much.
Yep.
It's easier to pick up.
It is.
There isn't a massive whole extra like 10 pages of religious rules. It's like 2 pages. So I appreciate that they made it easier, and I like that you have the religious aspect, but also the rebellion aspect. I think that's such a fun part of it too.
Yep.
But yeah,
I will still play this like every other time, right?
Here I Stand. I enjoy it. I think more thematically. I think it's like right there at that. Luther and his Reformation is such a fascinating piece of history that I do like to play in that space. But this was so good.
So good.
So
Absolutely.
good.
There's no doubt that it's a great game.
Yeah. There's more chrome to it.
Yeah.
Some of which I really like. Like I really like the patronage of the arts and the sciences.
I felt like nobody was doing that very much.
No one could afford to because we were all busy doing other stuff.
At each other's throats.
Or a couple of people just like messing up their roles real bad. That happened with I do
enjoy the marriages. I think
Me
that's
too.
an interesting part.
Well, and I think that adds to specifically the marriages adds to the diplomacy part of things, where otherwise perhaps you wouldn't have, or the diplomacy is like, I'm not really doing anything this turn because we're kind of keeping it status quo.
Yep.
But like the marriages give you at least something to have a quick chat about, and even if it's just that keeps it spiced up because you can get some cool bonuses from those things, which are nice.
And then you also have the diplomacy part, where you're moving your influence marker for the different minors.
That, to me, the way that minors are handled is infinitely better than Here I Stand.
I would agree.
It's much cleaner. And
although those cards never came up.
Well, you just never had them.
Well,
we had them.
Because I was like,
we just didn't. I had to play them for ARPS in the end. I had one at least twice. But then I remember that because that's exactly the same that they moved from Virgin Queen into Tanto Monte. That's one of the improvements that they really kept. That's very, very good. Yeah. I just like it's much cleaner. It's much easier easier to assess.
I
well.
like it. Yeah.
But conversely, the New World stuff in this is quite a lot more complicated. There's like a whole extra little map with its own set of rules
and then
all
the
this other
Spaniards
stuff.
Can even build fortresses and put out patrols to stop the other powers from just taking their treasure.
It's really like this second game within this game in a way that Here I Stand doesn't have that. You send your little guys over, your explorers,
it's a roll.
and you're going to roll a dice at the end, and that's what happens. Yeah. That's a very small rules overhead, whereas the changes that they've got only certain types of ships can go out here and all this other stuff.
Go against the wind or with the wind, and you get bonuses. And
there's just a lot of extra crunch, which makes Virgin Queen a bit more bloated. Some of that extra crunch is really good. Some of it, I think, is maybe a detraction.
But it's still a great game.
Yeah,
it's a blast.
It's still right up there with one of my favorite multiplayer games ever.
I don't know that I've ever played Here I Stand or Virgin Queen and not enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Even when I've got my teeth kicked in.
But yeah, we played that almost all of the daylight day and wrapped that up. That was really good. So thanks everyone who played that. Then
Indiana football defeated Michigan by 5 points, which was amazing for me.
10-0.
I was 10-0. I was very excited.
And then after that, David Siskin and a gentleman by the name of James sat down with us, and we just kind of potted around and pushed around and played a couple turns of Greek tragedy.
Because the rules weren't great.
Yes.
Just weren't clear.
So Greek.
No player aids.
This is from Blue Panther, and this is one of their bigger boxes. Got a big map in it, 4 decks of cards, and a whole bunch of wooden discs in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, they're not wooden. They are cardboard.
Oh, that's right. They're punchboard. They look cardboard.
Yeah,
they look
they
wooden
do.
because they're so thick.
They're fine.
Yes, I've forgotten about that.
Yep.
But yeah, there's 0 play aids in this. At least there wasn't the copy that we played. Maybe there is in this, and I don't know about it.
That's what you always have to ask yourself, right? Did somehow something get left out?
But yeah, there were no play aids, and the rule book was a bit of a struggle.
Not great.
And we were just we were partnering around with it, doing some bits and pieces. because I think the topic is really interesting,
It's the Greek Civil War.
and there's some really interesting concepts in here.
I think the combat mechanic is very interesting, but it is bloated.
It doesn't
and feels clunky.
Yeah, it's one of those games where once you have it set up and you see how many pieces there are on a board and how many spaces,
Yeah,
and
there's a
you
lot.
think, how many combats am I going to have to do in this game?
Yep.
And when you see the combat mechanic, it's kind of involved, and it
Yep.
involves all this separate card play, different from your regular card play. It's going to take an age to play.
Yeah.
And they say it's 90 to 120 minutes.
I think it's
With the
more
amount
like
of combats you're doing in a
2.5 to
full-play
3
game.
hours, yeah.
And I'm building my pieces and I'm moving around.
Yep.
And then it's like, cool, now we're going to take a break for some combat.
Yeah.
And where games, chuck D6 and look at a table or some quick way to resolve it, this is like, cool, let's count up some numbers and then I play a card and then you decide
play.
if you want to retreat or not and
Yep.
just take the L. And then you're like, no, I want to play. So you have to play a card. And it's like, well, now we can play more cards if we
Yeah.
wish to. And then we don't. And then it's like, cool, now I reveal one card and we resolve that. That might affect the cards you have.
Yep.
Then you reveal a card and then we
same
see what
thing.
happens there.
Yep.
And then we go back and forth and then someone has won.
Yeah.
And the combat takes a long time.
It does.
And it doesn't, it might not take half an hour for each combat, but the length of time that it takes multiplied by the amount of combats that you'll do in a big game like this means that it is arduous.
To keep the game moving along, it should have probably just been a die roll. Right, you total up the power of your
Yeah.
forces, and then each side rolls a die. You add them together, and boom.
Or-
but I do like the events; they're cool.
Or you keep the combat mechanic, because the combat mechanic is good.
It's cool, yeah.
And you make the board have fewer spaces, you
just too much.
abstract
Yep,
some
it's
of
so
that,
much.
so that you will need to do fewer.
Yeah.
It just needs some more work, honestly, which we don't. It's tough, because I think
I
looks
actually,
cool.
I actually think there's a game here. I'm not sure it was fully developed. I'm going to stick to that. That's the way I felt about
And
it.
from what David said, he knows the designer.
Yeah.
This was a rework of
was.
another older game that just needed the work to get it to this, and I
Yeah.
think it still needs.
Needs a little more.
Yeah, how are you gonna have a game with no plays? What are we
Yeah.
doing?
Once again, I do want to say that I was enjoying what we were doing. It just was so difficult to understand and get to that point that it kind of sucked the life out of me. Frankly.
Yeah, it was tough because
Yeah.
I think it could have been something that's really good.
Yeah.
But give it a year and someone's written some living rules.
Made a
someone's
play
made some
aid.
good play
Yeah.
aids.
Actually, Dave did a good job. He made some good play aids, but it was really what it was a redoing of the rules. But
Yeah.
a play aid usually should be a 1 to 2 sentence thing that just reminds you.
And put everything, because there's some really interesting stuff in here. There's all these boxes at the bottom that you're committing to,
Very interesting.
and those have effects
Types
at
of
the
cards,
ends of turns, and a totally different.
And you're going to score
things.
points based on
Oh.
those. It has a lot of good. It just needs some work.
Yes,
That's my opinion.
it still needs kind of some sanding and
Yeah.
polishing and finishing.
And while I love the canvas board, it does not lay flat. So you've got to play with a plexi on this because you've literally got little discs all over the board, and there's tenting areas unless you have a plexi.
And it's like major tenting.
Yep.
And because the way that they're printed, they're like a glossy, and they have zero grip on that.
So they slide.
And that was like you can't even keep your pieces in the sea. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
okay, thanks. Guys.
I really would like to try this again, but it's got to be fixed.
Yeah.
And then
Agreed.
I would be willing to dive back into it. But I'm glad we played it.
Me too. I'm glad because it was because we've been hearing about this since Buckeye Game Fest was really when
this
I
came
first
out
heard
like
about
in
it.
May. Yeah.
But I remember they had like a prototype
It did,
there, and
which we never
and,
were able to
well,
sit down
they were
and
like,
play it.
it's not. We're
We're
not
not
the
ready.
pieces. It's not
Yeah.
quite ready yet. I still don't think it is.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I think they're on the cusp of something
Yeah.
that could be really, really good.
I think there's something there. Definitely.
And then so that we did that. We kind of popped around with that for about an hour and a half or so, and then that night.
Before we go on, we had a visitor who stopped by.
Yes, we did.
Kind of blew me away.
Yes.
For those that are into comic books, and particularly Spawn, Spider-Man, what was the other one?
Those are the two big ones that
Okay.
I knew anyway.
But this is a comic book artist that is an avid board gamer and enjoys wargaming. Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
And it was like, somebody said, oh, Todd McFarlane's over there. I'm like, what? this isn't like Comic-Con where you're going to have personnel. And Todd also has like a full toy company that has made him a good living.
And this is embarrassing. That's how I know him.
Yeah, sure.
Like when
the toys
like,
and the models.
Oh yeah, like he's the owner of McFarlane Toys, and I was like,
oh yeah, I know him from comics,
and
like
his comics they're like just before like me. I kind of missed out on those.
Yeah, but you know, he came up to the table. He is a fan of the channel, which I was blown away by. He says he watches us.
He's a big coin nut.
Yeah, he loves the coin series. It was just fascinating to chat with him.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. That was awesome. I can't remember who it was. Someone had been like, man, I remember I queued up for like an hour and paid $20 for your autograph. And like he's right here at SDHC, just like shaking like, okay.
You know, and that's something I probably should have got his autograph, but that was very cool.
That was very
nice
cool.
chap. His son was with him. I thought it was cool that he was here. That he was there.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that was his first.
I think
so. It was like this is his first like board game.
Yeah, I think so.
So that was really, really cool. That was a good get.
Yeah,
and that was really fun to meet him and kind of take a picture together.
Yeah,
and I sent that to my brothers, and they're like,
yeah, I sent it to my daughter Maggie, who is into comics, and she was like, "You met that guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he like came up and talked to us."
Yeah,
it was way cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But that night we played a giant.
We is a broad term.
Sure.
I actually bowed out because I was knackered.
Yeah.
So
we had the giant celebrity game of John Company's second edition.
5 teams of 4 players.
It was 4 teams of 4, so it was like playing a 4-player game. It was you, me, James Buckley, and Gresha from
Midnight Board Gaming.
Midnight Board Games, which is a Spanish YouTube company.
I think she's from Mexico, I believe.
Sure.
Or maybe Southern California.
I don't.
Very nice young lady.
But I think her channel is in Spanish. I believe, which is it's a Spanish language. So yeah, she was wonderful. So it was the 4 of us. You bowed out because
after about 30 minutes, I'm like,
we'd had a long day of gaming.
And let me just put it this way, right? We have played John Company a lot.
Yes.
I know what type of people we're playing with from the very get-go.
Yeah.
When somebody's already trying to hold me up, when we're trying to get the company going, I don't get turned off. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like, gosh damn it, let us get established before you start asking me to give you money to put your people out in Bombay. Right? I mean, if you don't have my ship there, you're not getting paid.
Let's all pretend to work together for a little bit at least.
At least for a little bit. I just, because we've played it several times where people have gone hog wild from the get-go, and I feel like it just, that's my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it just needs to wait a turn, then go hog wild.
Yeah, I
Let
do
people
think
get settled.
I do think people love to jump the gun in that game.
Yeah.
If you play nicely for a couple turns, you'll all have a ton of money.
Well, and the company starts getting established,
and it's once it's
out of trouble.
It's always easy to tank the company. It really is.
It is.
And so you can turn that on later in the game once you can see where the victory points are at.
Yeah.
But people like to do it from the get-go.
Yep.
They're like, cool. I
well,
guess
we were chairman.
The ship's going down.
We were chairman, and I'm not going to mention a name, but somebody yelled something out, and I'm just like, wow, this is going to be long and unfruitful. That's my opinion. So I decided to bow out. I went back and actually finished up a blog post and had a good time. But
yeah, and then not long after that, James left because he'd flown over from England, so he was crazy jet lagged.
Yeah.
Like that's a 8-hour time difference.
Yeah.
So he bowed out. So it's just me and Gresha held down the fort, and it was a struggle. It was the frickin' Alamo of John Company games, beset upon on all sides by vile capitalists,
from internal
deceitful
turmoil.
and awful, and it ended up like I think it was us and the blue team of all people who the blue team. I was like. Looked like they were gonna just like be vultures, and then it ended up us two trying to save the company. Green team and the purple team were like, Titanic's going down. We've got all of the boats sailing away, and we just like the company went under,
But you pulled out a victory.
We pulled out a victory. We were tied victory points, and we had 10 victory points.
Because you retired two or three people?
We retired 3 guys.
That's great. The basic level, right?
Yeah, the basic ones that provide points. And then we also had a couple of the prestige cards, the family cards.
Right, they gave you a couple of VPs.
Season of London cards that gave us VPs as well.
Yeah.
And we also had a ton of power. And so the power gave us victory points too.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever won the power before.
I don't think I have either.
And we weren't ever the prime minister.
Okay.
So up the power.
You were chairman though, right?
Yes.
But prime minister is typically where you're going to win.
You can win a lot of power from that. But we ended up getting power from a victory, like one of those season cards. We also had one of the blackmail cards that you get them from.
Okay.
We had won at least one conquest, like a war. So we got one from that, and then some other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So we won that. So we tied on victory points, but the tiebreaker is the most windows, and we had volume of guys, and then so we had a bunch there, and then we had a couple windows on some cards, so we won the tiebreaker.
Nice.
And the victory felt very sweet because there was just the two of us left on our team, just like and there was so many people at the table had turned on the game. It was like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, the one other comment I would have is I really desperately wanted to have like Cole on one of those teams and Drew.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see what they fought over.
I would love to see Drew play it and see,
what do they negotiate for?
What do they
feel is
value?
important and what is valued? Because I think I value certain things, but I'm not sure. And that was what I was.
Are they cutthroat style players,
or
are they like, let's get along nicely?
Sure.
What does that look like? Yeah, but it was it was incredible what Drew and Cole had done. They'd blown the board up so it was a 4x6 feet.
Yep.
And they had huge blown up components. Like the ships were like actual
ship model ships,
like decorative ships you'd see in like a coastal grandma's bathroom.
We wrote the name on each of them.
Plastic sides, and it was just everything was like crazy big and well produced. That was so fun, and I love that they did that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a long night though. I got home at 11:30 that night. It was that was a tiring one. But wonderful. Glad I got to play it as well.
So Saturday's over. Sunday we went back to Point Break Cafe for the third time and the final time.
And the game that we played that morning
was...
Oh, yes! I'm like, where is it? We don't have it. We played...
Not a pirate game.
No.
If you're looking at my tricorn thinking, that's piratey. It is very piratey. But it's a tricorn from the American Revolution.
I don't think it's that piratey. I think it's fine.
It's the frills.
It's just decorative.
To me, it's the frills.
It's an officer's hat.
Okay, well, sure. Anyway.
But, we played Savannah from the Battles of the American Revolution series from GMT.
With the designer, Mark Miklos.
Yes, and Mark Miklos, the grandfather of the Bohr system.
Kicked our asses.
Yeah, so
it was amazing.
This was a rain check from 2 years ago at WBC where we had we had set up this exact thing. We were going to play Savannah 3-player, and it ended up where we had to take a rain check on that because there was a medical emergency.
Yep.
And as such, that was the bummer. It was he was so sad because he was like obviously concerned for you.
Well, then he
also
wanted to do it on like Vassal. And you know how I feel about Vassal. Vassal's okay.
It's also just not the same.
No, it's not.
Like straight up, it's not the same.
No.
Like so, we did it.
Yep.
I had a wig and a hat. You had a hat. He was all dressed up in his Hessian uniform.
All decked out.
Flags on the table. It was the big giant blown up version of it, which was also fun to play on that he uses for like tournaments and things like that. And
he controlled the British, I was the French, and you were the colonials.
Yes. And it was awesome. It was really, really fun, and we got destroyed.
Absolutely destroyed.
We got crushed into oblivion.
And you know what you did, Mark. You know what you did.
We have, so we sat down afterwards and really kind of like did a review almost.
Yeah, we did.
With Mark, still wearing hats. That is coming soon, and or you've already watched it. But that was such a joy. We played like all freaking day from like 9
Yeah,
till
I think we started at
5.
9, and I want to say we got done at 3:30 or 4.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And we didn't even take a lunch break.
Yeah, we
day.
played right through. Yeah.
Because we ate a
did.
bigger breakfast than normal and didn't take a lunch break.
Yes, and
So-
it was so fun
Yep.
to get back to ball because we played Brandywine
And had a blast with
feels
it.
like a few years ago.
Yep,
now.
it was at least 3 years ago.
and but getting back to it was like, oh yeah,
Yep.
I love the tactical cards in that game.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I like really remembered is when we had the.
Yep.
I picked those up and I'm like, oh
Well,
yeah.
it's that tactical matrix where you're playing a card, I'm playing a card, we compare them. If you played a skirmish and I played a withdraw, you're going to gain a +1
or
DRM.
nothing,
yeah,
or
a
negative.
-2.
And that adds to all the other modifiers from kind of your regular combat
Yep.
factors and shifts and terrain, all that stuff. But you get that combat matrix where it's that bluffing game of like, I'm playing this card.
Yeah.
And you kind of see what happens.
Yep.
And that's what the
Yep.
kind of local small kind of commander on the ground did that thing.
Well, and the other really great part about that tactical matrix and those tactics cards is if you don't have a leader in battle
Yes.
and the other guy does, he gets all 8 of his cards. You just get kind of
like
the 4
4.
basic. So that becomes a huge advantage to him because his choices now become much more tight, and he was able to capitalize that on that a couple of times.
And then you get into this is the part that I really love about that is especially when it's off balance like that, and I
Yep.
have all of them and you don't. You get into the like 7 or 8 layers of thinking.
Oh,
of
yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to play this because he can only play that.
Yep.
But he knows that I'm going to play one of my fancy cards because
so he's going to do this.
so he's going to play this
Yep.
one instead. But then is he going to think that I'm going to
Yep.
play one of my regular cards because he thinks I think I'm going to play the fancy card? And I don't even know where I'm at anymore.
Yeah.
But
And
that's...
then in the end, you just kind of like pick a card and throw it down.
yeah, and then you do it every time.
Yeah.
You're like,
And it's really good. That's one of the best parts about that game.
it's just so fun.
I enjoyed that in Winter Thunder by Brian Train, the bold
Oh,
game.
yes. Those are
Same
little chits,
concept.
right?
Yeah, they're chits. Same concept.
Identical concept.
The other thing that I really do enjoy about the Boar series is the rules are just really, I think, very clear.
Agreed. There's a lot of clarity.
Level of complexity there, but it's very grokkable. Like I
Yeah.
remember when we played Brandywine, I was surprised that we got it. Now we made a mistake or two, but I was surprised that we got it as quickly as we did, and it carried over this time. Mark kind of gave an overview, and we were in it.
The complexity of Boar, to me, is in the little like details you just have to remember of like, here's this kind of like there was that British naval bombardment area.
Yes.
Right? Like it's just remembering that and what it does.
Yeah.
Right? Or like there was the covered way. Okay.
Yeah.
That has its own little chart on the terrain effects chart,
can
and
get
like
lost.
there's some things to remember when you do it.
Yeah.
The complexity is remembering those things because the core system is not complex.
Yeah.
I have a movement factor. I move my guys according to the movement chart.
Yep.
I have an attack factor. I add up my attack factors. You add up yours. There's a ratio that gives a modifier.
Yep.
Not complex in any
Yep.
way, but it's the hey. These particular guys can't stack with these guys because
And
they don't like each other.
I think I made a mistake at least once with those, but by that point it was
But
way
like
over.
that's the complexity is just remembering the
keeping that
little
straight.
minutia and the details.
And there's also kind of a significant amount of maneuver to that game. Like
A ton.
we had to maneuver into position, and Mark was using his cavalry as skirmishers just to,
He used them as cavalry.
well, yeah, just to slow us down. It was great because you can't strategic move adjacent to someone, so it was just very well done. I enjoyed him showing us that.
Yeah.
And the next time we play, I'll do better on that part.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we played Brandywine,
I don't think there were a lot of cavalry, if I remember.
no, because it was also like we're fighting over this
Ford.
stupid Ford
Yep.
that was just like shooting each other to death, and
Yep.
it was all very bad.
Yep.
But I felt like in Savannah, where you've got like, here's the fort, go and assault the fort. It was this race to get there,
Yep.
dig the
Get in
entrenchments,
positions,
and
yep.
all of that maneuver and that time pressure meant that the movement was really important.
Yeah.
Lining up the guys in time, getting them there, getting them into the correct stacks, and then just going for it.
Well, and
that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, and all the while, we have to make decisions about when do we go from the strategic part of the game into the tactical part of the game, because he continues to get reinforcements. So it's like you've got to declare the assaults at a certain point, or he's going to get all of his guys. I thought that was very interesting. I think we played that wrong. I'm not sure the extra 2 guys would have mattered. We would have finished all of our...
It was a very interesting conundrum. But also he would have lost the -1 modifier for the unfinished
so it would have made it that much more difficult.
There's so many trade-offs specifically in Savannah for every decision that you make.
Yep.
And that was a joy to play around with. Even though we got spanked, it was really, really enjoyable.
And basically getting a mouthful of grape shot every single turn.
But it was just 2 mouthfuls because we had the storm and we'd get shot twice. Whereas normally you would make it up in one go.
Yeah, the weather was really bad.
Yeah,
the weather was very bad for us.
It was such a
rolls that were poor,
storied narrative game. It was really enjoyable.
But I'm very glad we played it. Very glad we played it with him. Got to do that. It was a great experience. Something I'll remember forever. And I'm very appreciative. To Mark for that.
After we kind of wrapped that up again, did a video with him, we sat down with Trevor Bender.
Yep.
And he showed us Korea, the 38th parallel, which is the new
combined arms series.
C3I combined arms system that's coming out in C3I 38, ironically.
Yeah.
38th
38th parallel, yeah.
We did an interview with him, kind of talked a little bit about that.
Yep.
And some of his other kind of different projects that he might or might not have going on. That was really enjoyable, and that was kind of where we wrapped it.
Yeah. And that was around 5 o'clock on Sunday evening.
Yeah. I was kind of zonked at that point. We'd done a whole lot.
We both were.
The convention did go another day, but it was that we had, Kelly and Paisley were there as well.
Had we not brought them, I think we would have played the next day, but that was the trade-off. We wanted to bring them. We wanted to experience that together. We were very appreciative to Harold and the board, because they have a board that puts this on. They put a lot of time and effort into it. It's very well done. It just had a blast, and this is our second time. I want to go every year. I know next year we cannot, but it's something that we're going to continue doing because it's just great.
Yeah, and if San Diego's not the most convenient place to get to for a lot of people in the country.
Unless you live in San Diego.
But if you can.
Or California.
That is a convention that I would recommend going to.
Very opening, very friendly. Yes.
Without being overwhelming.
And it has pretty much every style of game that you're going to want to play.
And the amenities nearby are great. There's lots of food, lots of drink, lots of everything that you could want kind of just sort of right nearby as well.
Agreed. Had a blast.
Yes. Oh, I have my little badge from the ball game. Yeah. Yay. Mark gave us little badges. And he gave us a chocolate bar as well.
He did, yep.
I have a chocolate bar with, I think, Benjamin Franklin on it upstairs.
Yeah, mine has Thomas Jefferson. I've still not eaten it. It's on my nightstand.
I almost don't want to eat it. I want to
it's kind of cool. I got home and I crashed. I mean, I was bushed.
Yeah, even Sunday night I crashed.
Yeah.
But then, when we flew home, I had the best night's sleep I've ever had in a long time.
I slept on the plane on the way back, and that tells you something, because I do not sleep on planes very well.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I had a wonderful time at SDHC. I want to do it again.
100%.
I think everyone I saw there was having a blast. And I think it's one of those conventions where it's almost impossible to not have a good time.
Yeah.
So appreciate everyone who played games with us there.
Thank you.
And everyone who
taught us games and
we did interviews with everyone's time and effort who kind of helps us to put content out there as well.
Yep.
But thank you very much also for you guys for tuning in and sticking with us. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.